He's a horse trading Ricky, and he's a traveling man.
Well, good morning, folks. Happy Sunday again to you here. Welcome back to episode number 2 of the Horse Trading Ricky stories. If you tuned in last Sunday, you saw an introduction to what's going on here. But if this might be your first time tuning in, what we're doing here is promoting a new song that I've recorded into the studio called Horse Trading Rickeys. It is about my grandpa Clarence Rickey, who was a horse trader by trade in the early 1900s. And I've been letting my dad kind of lead these discussions because a lot of the stories that I talk about within the song were passed down to him from his grandfather. And he touched on some subjects last week, and he's got some more stuff here to show you all, so I'll turn it over to him. What do you got, Dad?
Okay. I talked last week about the census report that he filled out in Durant, Oklahoma in 1920, and he was 16 years old. And his father, William Columbus Rickey, was 35 years old.
Where's his signature at, do you know?
Right down here, you got to get a magnifying glass on it.
Okay.
But anyway, and Polly Wooten, I think, when they were married, he was 21. That was his second marriage. She was 16, I think. And he had a boy 8 years old, was my dad's half-brother, Earl Rickey. And I got a picture of her here I want to share with you. She's in the hospital. She really didn't know her age until she got in the hospital. Then we found out. This was 1979. She was 105 years old in Camington, Missouri. This was taken.
Who was she married to?
William Columbus Rickey.
William Columbus.
And this is Polly Wooten Rickey from Hannibal.
That was Grandpa Clarence's father, right?
Yeah, right. And this is
William
his mom.
Columbus,
This is his mother.
Yeah.
And I think she grew up some in Pittsfield, Illinois, and Hannibal. And then later on, I was in 2022, February 9th, the Odessa put an article in the paper about the Kinslow livery stable in Mayview, Missouri. And my dad always told me tales about going there and every year or two, and he was friends with a guy by the name of Ed Kinslow, and he'd always buy and sell, and they'd trade. And one time when I was about 13, we went by there, and my dad was out of the horse business then, but Ed was out beside of his road there in Mayview, and he had a horse. And my dad stopped and visited with him and introduced him to me. I was 13. But getting back to Polly, and then I got a story I want to tell about where he camped in Mayview and was headed to Lexington and Richmond, and it's a real funny story I want to tell. And then I'll be done for this segment. But this is this picture here was taken by my wife in 1973. This is my granny Polly Rickey, and that was her trailer she lived in. That was a Spartan trailer, which she really didn't like because she was used to wood heat. She liked to cook and heat and everything on wood. And you see that window's been replaced. I think that window got blowed out because she smoked a corncob pipe and she lit the stove and gas blew that window out, I think. But anyway, my dad always told me a tale, getting back to the Kinslow era of that livery stable. He'd always go through Mayview. He'd come up. Sometimes he'd come up through Kansas, but then he stopped coming through there because they had dipping pens and it cost 10 cents a head to dip the ponies and horses. And so he decided to come back up through. He come up through Nevada and Joplin, and I guess somewhere around El Dorado Springs, Jericho Springs or something like that. He'd stay there and he'd work his way. Finally, he'd end up in Mayview. But this time in Mayview, he ended up there, and it was about this time of year. He was heading to Richmond and Lexington. He'd go to Mayview and deal horses there with the Kinslow, and then he'd go to Lexington and run that sale and then to Richmond. But he stayed all night in Mayview, Missouri with his horse and buggies, my mom, and about 1927. So my oldest brother lived in Pitcher, Oklahoma. He was probably 3 or 4 years old, and he was traveling right along with them. I mean, they all traveled in the wagon. And he said that next morning he got up, he was going to try to make the Lexington sale, and he cooked their food and stuff. You know, they had to have meat that wouldn't spoil, like cured meat, and beans and stuff like that. So they decided he had a wood stove in this top wagon, and they'd put on their beans to cook for their lunch. And they got all hooked up. He said it was the prettiest day out you ever seen. The sun was shining and everything. And they was heading to Lexington. And they went up Route E. He showed me the area. I can go to the area right now where he showed me slid off in the ditch with his top wagon. And it started snowing. And he said before no time at all the trail was slick. Anyway, his old top wagon and horses, the wagon slid off in a rut and spilt the beans, and he couldn't get the wagon out, so he walked up the road, and there was a farmhouse there, and he asked that gentleman for help, and he sent 4 boys down, and they with a hedge fence posts, and they lifted the wagon up out of the ditch, and he made it on to Lexington, and sold his horses and stuff, and then the next day he went on to. I think the second Tuesday of the month was Lexington, and the third Tuesday or Thursday of the month was Richmond. Then he'd go to Richmond and make that sale, and then he'd either go back over around Moberly or somewhere there, and then he'd end up back up down in Arkansas. He had a brother who lived in Harrison, Arkansas, so he'd go back down through there and see him, and he'd end up going down through there trading and getting out of the cold weather up here. And then it'd be the same thing over the next spring. He started all over again.
A lot different than days we have now, huh?
Yes, yes. And I would have liked to lived in those days.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all are enjoying these segments. Stay tuned for the song to be released on May 20th. It's called The Horse Trading Rickeys, and these are family stories. I hope you all enjoy. Y'all have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
He's a horse trading Ricky.